So what about a full bust adjustment when there's no darts? It can still be done. Don't worry. That's what we're going to be talking about today for today's Tricky Thursday. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha, your pattern nerd friend, and we talk about all things pattern making, fitting, and sewing here on this channel. We have been discussing, as part of the Read the Wrinkles series, about full bust adjustments, otherwise known as FBA. And if you want to check out the other videos about the full bust adjustments that we've already done, we've done one with a dart under the bust, if it was a princess seam, how to make those adjustments. Today we're going to be talking about what if there is no dart? How do you make this adjustment? This is a knit top because I thought that this would be the most common situation where you would run into, like that you needed a full bust adjustment, but you didn't have a dart to put it into. But this would also work if it was a non-stretch garment that you needed to have a full bust adjustment done to as well. It would work very much the same. And just like we started in those other earlier videos, we are starting with a mock-ups. We're assuming that we didn't realize that maybe we needed a full bust adjustment until we got to this stage. And what I'm going to be sharing with you, at least for the beginning part of this, is only going to be able to be done on a mock-up. So getting this information, how I'm going to do like what we would do in a fitting, is not going to work if this is a finished garment, but there are other ways to find out ahead of getting the fitting how much you might need to adjust, and you can get a relative idea. I like doing it this way where you find out in the fitting, because that way there's no guessing. There's no, oh, maybe I should add this amount or that amount and fancy formula. And I know not everyone's a fan of math, right? So I like to find things out in a fitting. So I'm a big fan of mock-ups. Don't come for me if you're not a fan of mock-ups. You will learn if you're new to my channel that that's the way we roll around here, because it is a tool for us to get the most efficient information. But I digress. Let's get back to the task at hand, talking about full bust adjustments with no dart. So we have been including these full bust adjustments as part of the Read the Wrinkles series. So we are looking at what wrinkles are we paying attention to? What's telling us that we might need a full bust adjustment in this instance? But it's a little harder with knits, right? And again, with the other videos that I've shared with you, when you're thinking about a full bust adjustment, the biggest tell is how you feel, right? If you're feeling tight across the bust area, then that's probably an indication that you need a fuller bust. You can, this is just in any case, not necessarily this only situation, but you can sometimes let out the side seams and give yourself a little bit extra room all the way around in the bust circumference. But sometimes it only needs to be right there in the front just because you need that extra room for the bust. Though you can't really see it, I want to talk about the tells that you might be looking for to know whether you need this adjustment or not. So first of all, like I said, the number one thing is it's feeling tight across the bust, right in here, like stretching and pulling. The other thing with knits is a lot of times, and with the woven, sometimes you'll find that it kind of gaps at the armholes there, and sometimes you'll get wrinkles. Like this one has a little bit of a wrinkle here going up to the bust. So anytime we're reading the wrinkles, wherever the wrinkles are pointing, that is the indicator that something might need to change in that area. That's how we know that we might need a full bust adjustment in this style of top. Now we're going to get into when we've decided we need to do a full bust adjustment. What do we need to do? So we are going to do the exact same thing that we have done in our other two examples. We're going to cut straight across the bust and go into the armhole. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I know this looks a little crazy, right? And just so you know, if yours looks a little crazy, that it's totally perfectly fine. You try to get as straight as you can and then angle up towards the armhole, going to nothing so that there's a little bit of a hinge here. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's really hard to be perfect when you're doing something on the body. But the next step is you want to have some ribbon, some tape, something so that we know how much space is going to be what we need. And of course, again, we're going to be using our grosgrain ribbons or any kind of ribbon that doesn't stretch. You can use elastic in this case if you're working with knits, but I think this will be good, and we'll just boop. And there you go. And if you are new to this method, like I mentioned before, you might want to check out my other full bust adjustment videos where I explain this a little bit further. But essentially, we want to pin it so that the person wearing it, Miss Susie in this case, she can tell you whether that feels good. And that's what I like about doing this kind of adjustment, because you can actually feel what the adjustment's going to feel like before you get into the pattern, instead of just relying on numbers, right? So Susie, how do you feel? You feel better? I think she feels better. So notice that by doing this, I no longer have that drag line going to the side. We don't have the gapping in the armhole, and the person wearing it feels a lot better, and that's how you're going to know. So now let's take this over to the pattern and see how we make this adjustment. One reason that I like doing it this way is so we can find out exactly how much we need to add. So you're going to go ahead and measure what your little ribbons tell you. In my case, it's telling me a 1/2 inch. So if this was full scale, it would be 1 inch. And once you know that, then we can move to the pattern. In this case, we are working with a pattern that does not have a dart in it. And this pattern already has seam allowance on it. So I went ahead and marked that seam allowance, because I don't really like doing adjustments on patterns that include seam allowance. And it's right here where we are actually going to be making our adjustment. So that 1/2 inch that we noticed, where I'm going to add it to the stitching line. So this blue line is my seam allowance. That's what I would cut out of fabric, but the green line is where I would be stitching. So I'm going to go a 1/2 inch outside of the green line, a 1/2 inch there. And then I'm going to take my pattern. I traced this onto a new piece of paper just to make it easy so you guys could see. And what you want to do is you actually want to take this other pattern, and now I'm placing that green stitching line, with the seam allowance. If it makes it easier for you to take the seam allowance off, you absolutely could do that. And with this paper, I can kind of see through. So I want to put my side seam onto that extension, whatever that amount that you're going to add in this. And then I'm going to pivot it back to the waist. So I can tell where the waist is on this pattern because it curves in. It doesn't have to be exactly the waist, but that's what I'm going for. So I'm going to line that back up there. And I am going to use, because it's got the seam allowance on it, I'm going to use my handy needle wheel, best pattern making tool ever. And I'm also going to go ahead and mark where that stops. And I know it's going to be hard to see, but I will go ahead and draw that in. So the red line is where I am adding that extra space. And now just to double check where we are with our side seam, so I went to here, and then if I rotate it, it's a little bit shorter here down here at the bottom because of the adjustment that we made. So you might want to take off a little bit off of the hem and blend it back in, since you're adjusting that side seam a little bit. And then the last thing that you want to do is we have it again, this stitching line of my pattern on this 1/2 inch that we've added. And instead of going down, we are going to blend back in to the armhole. So just going to blend it in there. So now this red line is going to be our new stitching line. So this goes away, and I would want to add my seam allowance back on and blend it back in to what was already there. So this blends into the stitching line, and we can connect it there. So that is where I've added that extra space in here. Now I do want to mention at this point, you can take this information, and if you have a huge adjustment and you really feel it would be best to have a dart and add a dart into this garment, you absolutely can do that. Let me know if you want to see how that works, but that is also an option if you think that this might not do the trick. So that's it. Let's see what it looks like when it's all made up. Okay, Susie, how do you feel? I think she feels pretty good. Now I know it's probably hard to tell the difference in this, but something that you can look at is we're not seeing those drag lines like you saw before, and we don't have as much gapping in the armhole. So this is with the new pattern that I just corrected. And just to show you one more time, we have that red line is connecting to our stitching line, and then the seam allowance is added to it. So another thing I wanted to mention specifically with knits is that notice this is a mock-up. There's no hem, there's no finishings, there's no binding around the neck. It's how I would normally finish this kind of top off. And so some of this gapping and stretching out of the neck and the armhole will be controlled by however you're going to finish off those edges. So, not just the gapping in the armhole is always the telltale that you need this kind of adjustment for this style of top. So you really want to be looking at all the elements, how it feels, the other wrinkles, the other drag lines that you might be seeing in this style. Well, that is it. I hope you enjoyed. And now we have done 3 of these FBA series. Hopefully you find it helpful and with whatever situation that you are in. Now, as always, I always look to you if you guys have some suggestions or questions about a particular adjustment or something that you want to see, because I am here to help explain these crazy things to you in the best way possible. So please leave a comment down below if you found this helpful, or if you have some other ideas of some other things that have been kept you stumped a little bit. And I do still have a list going that I will be getting to as well. And if you want to be in touch with everything that CCA has to offer, please make sure that you sign up for the Pattern News List. That's our bi-monthly newsletter that we send out. Promise, it's only cool stuff. You get freebies in there. You're the first to know about all of the fun events that we might be having going on. That's all we have for you today. I look forward to seeing you next time.